Hello, everybody, and welcome. I guess it's good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, one of the most valuable hours of your day. I'm Michael, your MC Sifu for today's adventure, and please pardon my microphone. Today's show, oh shoot, what was today's show? Today's show is
How your values
values.
support your goals.
Yeah, this is step two of our own Tim Flynn's foundation of self-discovery. And yes, we're continuing on our value discussion today. So let's meet our group of hosts today. We've got four, possibly five coming in, one maybe a little late. But first is Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator. How are
Hello.
you today?
I am very well. Thank you very much. It's so nice to see you guys here today.
And next is Tim, our expert executive analyst.
Hi, Michael. Glad to participate today. Nice to see you all.
And Dennis, our freedom facilitator. Dennis, are you there?
Oh, Dennis is muted. Mute alert. Mute alert.
Hi, Mike. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. Glad to be here. Thank you so much to all our listeners for spending their valuable time with us. Thank you.
All right, so I guess we're just going to get right into what we were talking about a little bit yesterday because we've got some more of our hosts today. Let's step back a little and talk about the exercise that we did on Wednesday and what you guys had as a result. So Tim or Dennis, do you want to talk about the results that you got from the exercise that we did?
Sure. After you, Tim.
Okay, Dennis, thank you. So I have taken this test in the past, but it's been quite a few years, and I found it, I think like Michael, a little daunting, the number of words or choices that I could have. But once I started into the exercise, I just checked all the boxes on the front page that kind of called out to me. And then I think the process of organizing them under the five headings was kind of helped me sort things out quite a bit. And in the exercise, we're supposed to pick everything that calls out to you and then organize them by like terms or what you consider to be like terms, and not think too much about it, just whatever strikes you. And so I got my five columns together, and I had about anywhere from 3 to 12 words in each column. But then as I looked at the column, the words that I picked out first seemed like perfect column headers for me. So I didn't really go through it any further. I just took the first words in the five columns, and then I broke them down into sentences. And then the sentences, I think I got a little confused by writing the sentences and a little bit too thoughtful maybe, but they did speak to me, and I was able to kind of write my truth. And I don't know if people are reading their sentences, but I think I want to go ahead and do some of that. So the first one was find and live in abundance in mind and body. And I think why that's important is because if you have the scarcity mindset, or if you have stress or nervousness, then you can't operate at your best. So having that, it doesn't have to be financial or physical, but just having abundance in your mind and an open and wide space where you can operate creatively and bring yourself to the world without fear. So that's kind of what that first one meant to me. And then facilitate autonomy for myself and others. So that's kind of what we're doing here. And that's what we've enjoyed, building relationships where we can help each other out, add value to the process, and help each other achieve their own autonomy, and at the same time achieve our autonomy. And then practice creativity in my activities and seek new opportunities for change. So I think too often we get stuck in our habits and our ways that we think things should be, or things that we've been doing for years that are similar and comfortable. But I found that putting myself out there, making room for change, allowing new things to come into my life has been much more rewarding over the past few years, and kind of breaking down psychological barriers, being open to new opportunities, new people, and certainly all of you are part of that. And then act with commitment and love. So that was, I only have 4 sentences, so I included commitment and love, which was my one of my columns. I think why that's important to me because I feel strongly about family, about compassion and relationships, and treating people with dignity and acting with commitment, being able to fulfill my commitments in integrity and being congruent words to actions. And I think these things are what make me feel like I'm putting myself into the world in the right fashion. And I want to use those as a foundation, those values as a foundation to grow myself and to put my value out into the world. So that's a long-winded answer to a short question.
Thank you, Tim. How about you, Dennis?
All right, it was certainly a powerful exercise for me. And what stood out for me right away was that, as I explained, was it on Monday, then I had this background and the experience about defining values like within a group setting, but I really didn't do it for myself in that to that extent. So I kind of, like I thought about it and I had some experience with it, but only really within the group and within our non-profit organization, with our charitable organization, and working together with children and kind of having to think about everybody and is everybody getting the exercise, is everybody really expressing him or herself properly, are we really, with how we phrase it, with how we define our goals, is that I was thinking about the group, about others, especially the children, to ensure that everybody is heard and everybody is represented by the values that we define for ourselves. So it was really great, to actually have to think only about myself, and that was a challenge in itself. And what was interesting is that after the initially seemingly overwhelming amount of words was put in order in the 5 columns, which kind of happened kind of ad hoc, and that was kind of shifting a few words back and forward after until it seemed to make sense with me, and I grouped them according to what they meant to me. And then when I narrowed it down to those to 5 words really, and I started looking at them, it's like I felt the whole exercise for me actually brought to light that those words that stood out in the end, how I defined them and what they meant to me, actually they come back to one. So they were like different words describing actually the same thing. And that was really interesting for me. And so like words like well-being, and I have love and harmony. And if I really look like how I define them, like what does it mean for me to be in harmony? What does it mean to be well? And then I always have in the back of my mind this holistic approach. So it's like, okay, so let's start with the physical. So I'm a physical being. What does it mean for me to be physically well? How does my day look? How do I feel in my body when I'm well? And that then also means I'm actually centered in love. So love was another word I had. Grace and resilience and harmony were also there. So it's like, okay, so actually they all kind of intersect each other, or they partially mean the same to me. And then I would go through, what does it mean emotionally for me to be well, for me to be in harmony? Okay, like how is my mood? How does that what does it mean how I relate to others? How does this harmony express itself in my day-by-day life? And so I kind of went through the words and found out that in the end it's like really one thing I'm looking to live up to, and I'm searching for. And then how that relates to goals is also, well, my goal actually is to ideally every day in every moment to be centered in that, to center myself in love, to be in harmony with myself, with others, to be well in every way. And so it was a perfectly logic way of narrowing it down. And for me, recognizing that, you know, like all roads lead to Rome. So it all really it helped me to bring awareness to what is really important for me. And there may be different words, and I recognize they may shift throughout time and sometimes even throughout the day. What's a little more important, or how I would describe it differently. But in the end, it's really all about, for me, it's all about finding that balance, finding that inner harmony. And yeah, that's what this exercise highlighted for me. And yeah, I was is that something that you can relate to? Did you have like a similar experience? How was it for you, Agnieszka, for example?
Well, actually, I was going to share my words again today because yesterday when I shared my words, my microphone cut out and none of that was audible at all for the first 15 minutes of our show. So, and it was a very mysterious thing because Mike could still hear me, but none of our listeners could hear me. And apparently it was just a loose cable at the back of a microphone. So take that as a warning. But what my problem was that I wanted 6. I had 5, but I wanted 6. So my words were learning, loving, creativity, vision, appreciation, and autonomy. I could not choose between appreciation and autonomy. The other ones were fixed, but the appreciation and autonomy really, like, I wanted them both.
So what was it about autonomy that, I know that we're all kind of bound up in that together with the course, but what was about that word that spoke to you kind of outside of that?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's my personality, and even as a child, I when somebody like when I was a child and an adult would say to me, "Do this because I said so," I would just laugh. And if they wanted to punish me, they could do whatever they wanted to, and I would just still laugh. Like I was an unpunishable child. You could send me to my room, you could cut me off TV, and all I was like, "Yep, so what? I got my own thing. I got my own, I don't know, sense of self, I guess. I know what's right and wrong. You know what I mean? Like I didn't, and not that I was a bad kid or whatever, but I always had my own idea of what my sense of right and wrong was, independent of the adults in my house."
I can see that.
So are you saying that the children can actually know right from wrong without being told by adults?
I believe I was born that way. I don't know about anybody else because I've never been anybody else in this lifetime.
That's true. We can always only speak for ourselves, right?
That's right.
So I wrote my words down below autonomy in that category. So that was a column heading for me. So what I slotted under that were freedom, uniqueness, vision, peace, ethics, health, and well-being.
And I do
Hopefully
see
that resonates.
when you present that list of words, I do see what Dennis is saying because all those words just mean love, right? Freedom, uniqueness. To me, I can just see it as, really elevating everybody and recognizing the unique essence.
Well, I'll just reveal my words again, so everybody knows. But my word for love, because love is definitely a high one for me, but it was even more powerful for me with the word passion. And to me, that is an embodiment of love, but it's got that other thing, which is this kind of like motivation to like really take on that into like a role. But for me, the 5 words that I have was expression, collaboration, innovation, and wisdom. My 5. And what our subject or our topic today is how these values affect our goals. And so who wants to lead off with a little discussion or lead into that?
Sorry.
Nope, you're up, Agnieszka.
I muted myself. I mute myself when I need to cough, but it still switches the video to my face. I'm like, oh. Sorry, what was the question?
So values and goals, and how they relate.
Values. Oh, right. Values and goals. So I had a story about that because without goals, like who are we without goals, right? When we're growing up in school, when in high school and university, right, we have goals because we have deadlines. We have midterms, we have deadlines, and those become our goals. Our goal is to graduate, right? And then that everything else informs that goal. But once a person becomes an adult, they have two paths that they can follow. On one hand, they could just fall into whatever experience unfolds in front of them, right? And just really, take whatever first job that's offered to them. And that can go two ways. That can be good, following your inner sense and following your heart. But that can also manifest as just doing the minimum and not trying too hard and not sticking out from the crowd and basically taking a job, not necessarily because it's in line with who you are, but because it's there, right? So for the person that took the job because it was offered to them and they've already graduated, they might find themselves in a place where they have no values. Everybody has values, where they have no goals, where they're not actually physically looking forward to something. And when that happens, when a person is in a situation where they don't, they're not looking forward to anything, they're not intending anything in their lives, stagnation tends to ensue, right? These type of people end up watching TV every evening, doing the same thing every day, and not having the ability to really direct their life in a more autonomous fashion, I guess. Even if you choose to work a 9-to-5 job, you can still direct your life. You can still educate yourself. You can still do hobbies. There are a lot of things that person can do. But a lot of people fall into this sort of marasm, where they're not really doing much and they're just sort of stuck in this nitty gritty. And then what they end up doing is described by one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite authors, Robert A. Heinlein, who said, "You go to work to make the money, to get the bread, to get the strength, to go to work, to get the money, to get the bread, to get the strength." And it's a full circle. And in that circle, there's no space for self-actualization. So essentially, having a goal, even a small goal, or a huge goal that you may never achieve, it actually gives you an arrow that points you in the right direction. And then even taking the smallest step towards that goal gives your life a purpose. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Definitely, yeah, it does. And then if I relate it to my background as a fitness trainer, as a coach, then working with a client, you would people won't come and expect like their wish or their goal to be fulfilled like within the first session or even within the first month, depending on the goal, of course, that they have. If their goal is just to have fun for an hour, then yeah, maybe that we can do that. But then if people come and have I want to, I don't know, lose 20 pounds, or I want to be able to do 20 pull-ups, or whatever the goal is or the idea is that they have in mind, then the way to go about it to achieve that goal is to break it down and to have a strategic plan, like a long-term plan. Because ideally, you want to give them a plan, and you want to give them an outline of that plan, and they would not have to know all the details right away, because that's what you're there for as a trainer as well, to figure out the details and to be there with them. And then they would have to know what their part is. They have to
the responsibility, right?
Yeah, they have to put on their shoes and be there, and they would have to train twice per week or 3 times per week, or they would have to do ABC in order to really realize those goals. So that's that's what the trainer will basically identify.
So if I showed up to your studio and I said, "Dennis, I want to lose 20 pounds for my brother's wedding next week," you'd say, what limb would you like to cut off?
Well, there might be ways to do that, but I'm not sure if they're the most healthy ways, or if I could recommend, or if I can, so if I know about them. So, so the goals have to be realistic in a way that, I mean, a lot of some people say everything is possible, but it depends also on you. So, something might be possible for you, and the same thing might not be possible for the other person. So it will depend on, then there's some inquiry is necessary, right? Like, what is your background? Have you been working out before? Do you have experience? So, what do you eat? So your whole lifestyle, basically, you would have to kind of make an assessment first, right? So if I set goals for myself, I would have to assess, my present state. So you have to know where you're starting from and where you come from. So where does that person come from? What are they inclined to do? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? And because it doesn't make sense to to make an intricate plan for somebody, let's say, I don't know, somebody who would not eat meat, for instance, and you lay out a nutrition plan that contains almost only meat. So you have to know about the person and assess the present state, and then and then kind of by experience and by by your experience, basically give them a preview of what can be achieved. So it has to be achievable, because if you promise things that cannot be realized, or that will be very unlikely, difficult to be realized, then you're setting up yourself for failure. Like me as a trainer, as well as the person that comes to me, and then that will of course backfire, because it might feel all.
So we just have a listener, Pamela, stopped by, and she wants to know what the topic is tonight. So Mike, do you want to repeat the topic for tonight, so I'm not the one telling it? Okay, I'll do it. How your values. So what? Sorry. How your values support your goals.
How your values support your goals.
That's right. That's right. And so we're just talking about goal setting and the importance of goal setting, and how we're getting to the part where we talk about how your values support your goals. Continue.
Yeah, I actually wanted to find in regard to how your goals and your values, and a lot of times I think people, when they set up goals, it's kind of like the New Year's resolution. It's kind of like, I want to do this something in the future. A lot of the things, not necessarily maybe today, and it really is something that you've got to embody on a daily basis. You got to be motivated to do it on a daily basis. You got to chip away at it. You got to, like water on rock. You just got to keep doing something about those things on a daily basis. And how do you keep yourself motivated? That's where I think the values really come in, is when they align with when your goals align with your values. It's a lot easier to motivate yourself, because it is who you are. But anybody else got anything on that?
It has to become your lifestyle, right? So it's not like a quick fix, and you do this for 1 week or for 2 weeks, and then everything is good, and you go back to who you were. But if you expect changes, like whether it's in your physique, in your emotional state, or in your mental state, or how you perceive the world, then and if you want those changes to be long lasting, then logically you would have to make long lasting changes also in your attitude, in the way you eat, in the way you train, depending on what your goals really are. So that seems totally logical to me.
And so if you think about the exercise that we've done, the self-discovery, so understanding yourself and trying to dig deep into that and do introspection, and then clarifying your values, and then if your goals are congruent with who you are and what your values are and your ethical alignment, then they're much more powerful to you. You can actually see them happening, and you're drawn towards them. So things are hard, right? Changing behavior is difficult. And if you're trying to change in an area that doesn't mean anything to you, there's no way you're going to change. So it has to be totally aligned with your values, what you understand about yourself, and then you extend to areas where maybe you're uncertain, or you don't think maybe you're capable, or you have some self-doubt, but you use the drive of the values and understanding yourself to put yourself into areas where you're going to grow. And that's kind of what we're looking forward to, is extending ourselves into growth areas, establishing goals, and then chipping away at those over time, and building capabilities, and building our minds up.
Another trick is also to associate positive emotions with those new behaviors, or with those new habits that you're forming. So let's say somebody always associated pain and with going to the gym or with working out, then you may be able to help the client to associate something positive with it, or you may train yourself to get to like something, or to get to feel good with something that you had like an aversion against, and then and by associating positive emotions, like all of a sudden, you might just put in some earphones and listen to your favorite music while going on the treadmill, or you might go with a friend and spend some quality time, or you may do like a quality family time activity, and at the same time be working out, or whatever your goals are. But basically figure out ways how you can feel good and how you can feel great while doing while adapting that new behavior, and while creating new habits, until they become basically part of yourself. And then it becomes natural that you walk through the supermarket and you look left and right, and you see it, all the things that they call food, but because you know where it comes from and how it's being made, that it might taste good, but it won't do you good. And then it will be something that you have to force yourself to do, or it will have to be in your awareness, basically. But then after time it becomes a habit, and then becomes easy, and you don't have to remind yourself about it. You don't have to make any effort, but just like Mike was pointing out, it becomes just part of your new self. So you're creating like a new lifestyle and a new life, so to say, for yourself.
Yeah, so you'd have to do that for, what is it, 58 days straight in order to form, or maybe with 1 day off or whatever. But continuing a new habit for 58 days is what cements it in your brain, creating the neural pathways that make it feel like it's natural, right?
Was it so much? I thought it was about 30, 31. But I'm just
some people say 31, but if you take into, like, that would be 31 doing it nonstop every single day for 31 days. Yeah. But if you start skipping here a day and there a day and there a day, it would take, I'm subscribing to the theory that it's longer, because that way you're 100% sure that even though you skipped a few days here and there, the neural pathways are, because the neural pathways in your brain, when you're starting to do a new experience or a new exercise, right? It's like walking through a deer trail in the forest, right? You're trying to separate the all the bush, and you need a machete, and it's really hard, and you're scratched up when you're getting to the other side. It's terrible, right? But then as you walk through that deer trail every single day, it widens into a regular path, and then it widens into a street, a side street, maybe an alley, and then it widens into a 3-lane highway. By the time a habit is as ingrained as smoking or drinking or watching TV, it's a 3-lane freaking highway. It's so much easier to go down a 3-lane highway than it is to try to machete your way through the bush.
So you're basically saying that through a new idea, like through this mental exercise of first it's just an idea that we have, that we develop in our mind, and by holding on to that, and by further practicing it diligently for a certain amount of time, that we actually, through that mental idea, we can actually imprint our physicality and make and trigger physical changes within ourselves.
Neural changes in your brain. Yeah, absolutely. And there's endless evidence of people seemingly failing at trying something, doing it over and over and over, and then turns out that they're successful after the 40th or 50th try. But a lot of people, when they're not successful in the 5th try, they'll be like, it's been 5 times, screw this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's something we learn really as very young children. And it's something that we really have. It's kind of a natural trait. but it's been schooled out of us to a large degree, I think, and that's why the fear of all these different things, these rational fears like public speaking and so forth, and being made, fear of failure, are really conditioned into us to keep us from doing those natural things. But in reality, it is, I think it's a very natural process that we just got to be willing to go to meet what our values are, and so establishing our goals that realize our values are really what we're programmed to do.
Imagine what would happen if someone create a goal that was like the opposite of their values. Like, somebody, well, I guess, Mike, you come up as an example. Somebody who's love-oriented and reaches for the best for humanity, and then they join the army. How does that work? How does that feel?
Well, again, I think that's, but that's that kind of the confusion that occurs in our current society, is that's why the reason, like everything is kind of upside down, is because this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to steer us in the way that is useful for them rather than what's useful for us.
So I really like Dennis's
idea. You got to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, I like Dennis's idea of tying the emotion to the activity. So I think goals are, in theory, they're an endpoint, but really it's the process of achieving the goal and going through that, like kind of building up your muscles, building up your mind, building up your habits, and stretching yourself in different directions so you don't come back and you're not the same person that you were in the past or after you did these activities. So you're stretching yourself out. Everything else becomes easier. And if you're working congruently with your goals and you've attached positive emotions to the activities, then you can go and work hard at the gym or put in the time, put in the additional effort, and you understand that that's the path, right? It's the path that we're on, and it's not just the goal and the achievement of the specific goal, it's the activities that you live out to get to that goal. And I think goals you have to have those, and as Agnieszka says, like having something out there that's bigger than yourself that you can't possibly achieve, having a North Star to follow is excellent. And I just remember, like, after I achieve some big goal, then it's inevitably a letdown because I really enjoyed the process. And it was more about the, what I did and the confidence that I built in order to achieve that goal. So there's a little bit of a letdown whenever you achieve something and you kind of start looking around for what's the next big goal that I need to take on. So it's an interesting process.
That's why having a lifetime goal or a lifetime mission that overarches everything will allow you to, no matter how many goals you achieve, still have the direction. And you know what else, you guys? Willow's here. Yay!
Hey!
Willow.
Hi, everyone.
Willow, our trauma consultant.
That's right.
Consultant. Hello, Willow. How are you today?
I'm actually doing fantastic today.
So how do your goals inform? Oh, sorry, you were going to ask her about her 5 values. I'll just back off. Sorry.
I love your enthusiasm, though, Agnieszka.
Sorry, I had a cough there. Go ahead. Talk about your experience with our exercise in regard to finding the values, and then we'll relate them to goals.
Well, of course, my mind went blank as soon as you asked me a question. Let's see.
What are your 5 values?
We did the value exercise, and you had the idea was to write down the words that appeal to you, and then pair them.
I apologize.
Down to 5.
That's why my mind went blank, because I forgot to do the exercise and I didn't remember until just now.
All right, back to my
Oh, that
question.
makes it a lot easier.
The values that you know about yourself, how are they influencing your current goals?
I can answer that one. So, you actually helped me figure the first one out. I realized that I had a version of PTSD, CPTSD to be exact. And I was really struggling because I was really depressed. I was crying every day. I met Agnieszka and I called her and I was like, "Do you want to hear about all my problems that I'm having?" And one of the biggest issues was I wasn't cooking, and I cook for my entire household, no matter who's living with us. Anytime I meet a friend, I feed them. It's like a caretaking role that it's how I show that I care. And all of a sudden, I didn't want to do that. And it was really upsetting my household because when you're the only one that cooks, everyone's like, well, you got to let us know that you're not going to cook. And I ended up neglecting a lot of duties. But Agnieszka helped me realize that I was overextending myself. I was putting all of my values in, or I thought that where my value laid was I don't know. I thought that where my value was how much I could caretake for other people and what I could do to make their lives easier, versus just realizing that I enjoy cooking for people and like separating those. So I actually realized that one of my values, because I fought her for like 3 weeks on this, is cooking for my husband, caring about like making sure that my family has adequate sleep and rest time, nutritious food. Like I think it's the basis for a healthy human being. So I fought a long time because Agnieszka was telling me to like buy simpler meals and cook less and kind of do things for myself. And I was like, this is not at all. It seems so wrong. I feel terrible, like I'm letting my entire family down. That was one of the most important values, is like seeing myself as a valuable person first, just not instinctively. Can't think of the word right now. Intuitively, I think, as a valuable person versus what I could do for other people. Sorry, that's like my biggest value right now that I've been going over.
So basically realizing that you have value, even if you don't cook, even if you don't do anything at all, but just being who you are without doing anything, there's already an intrinsic value within that. Is that what you think?
Yes.
Yes, and the other thing was that she didn't need to go through huge, great lengths in order to provide for her family. She could make sandwiches if she wasn't really into cooking, and that did not diminish her value as a human being. They still got fed, and it was easy, simple, and fast.
And that in itself is a fantastic goal to have, right? To continuously be aware of the fact that we have value, and that that we learn to appreciate ourselves regardless of what our output in the physical world is, and that we have an intrinsic value to ourselves. I wanted to add something to what Tim had
That
said.
was the word I was looking for. Sorry.
There you go. I when just adding to what Tim was saying, I thought it's an important step also to, once you have achieved your goal or your goals, to celebrate that and to be aware of when you have achieved it. So first, when you set goals, you have to define those goals properly, right? Like, I don't know, like your next goal is to lose 2 pounds or whatever. And then when you actually have achieved that goal, so continuously you measure and you look back, or is it there? No, another week, whatever. And then when you have achieved it, to celebrate it. And whatever, whether it's a party or whether it's just you treat yourself to I don't know, like a glass of juice or however you celebrate it, but like to make yourself conscious and aware of, okay, I set a goal and I achieved it. Because oftentimes what I realize is that, we might set goals and we write down the goals. And then, if 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, like I coincidentally, come across what I wrote down years before, and I'm like, oh, holy moly, like I actually achieved almost everything of that. And I didn't even notice, so, it just went by. But, then, this story, like, oh, I want a big car, and then somebody get the big car. And by the time you have the car, he already wants the house. And by the time he gets the house, he wants this and he wants that. So it's like, we should be aware and like look back at the goals that we had in the past and actually check back, did we achieve them? How did it feel? What did it do? What happened in that moment? And to celebrate that too. So we can actually, what we're looking to achieve by reaching our goals, we completely lose it if we're not aware of that we actually have achieved something.
Yeah, I say that, your willpower is kind of like a flywheel, like a weighted flywheel, that when you start moving it, it's pretty hard to get it moving. But then once you start to get it moving, and then you can kind of accelerate it, and your willpower grows. And it is really about, I think that realizing some minor goals is a way to kind of build that momentum that gets that willpower flywheel moving. And then by utilizing your daily practices, you can just keep that thing moving, and you can accelerate it. And pretty soon your willpower is a tool that you can use, that you can apply it to different goals and objectives and missions and things that you want to do. And they come so much easier because a lot of what a lot of the barriers that we have to our own success are inside of ourselves. It's really our own thinking that's preventing us from getting what we want. And that's, again, is one of those things with the being parallel with our values makes it so easy.
Speaking of like the flywheel, is that what you called it?
Yeah.
And like it spins faster and faster. A whole slew of values came out of that one self-esteem raising one. The biggest one was I joined a jiu-jitsu class, and it felt really comfortable at the time, but now looking back, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu. I didn't know what positions I was going to be in. I didn't know anything about what it was going to, physically feel like, because I probably wouldn't have joined. I probably would have chickened out. And for the first 2-3 months, I didn't go consistently. I didn't want to be there. It triggered me all the time into like flashbacks and like a whole bunch of other things. Like I started getting like actually reading about trauma, understanding what was going on, what I've been dealing with my entire life, talking to all of my friends and helping them open up, because I'm like, you guys are dealing with the same stuff. This is why we're friends. And this like self-defense classes, and just in general, like even down to like how much water I drink, how much water I want to drink, and it tastes better. Like it's a weird like after valuing myself, like my body will want healthier things. So it opened up that door where it's like, this is what healthy people feel like, and this is the energy that they're supposed to have, that I have been missing because I was just literally thinking down on myself, because it's a side effect of trauma as well.
Yeah, for sure. I've been kind of obsessed with what Mike was doing. When last week when Mike tried that emotional writing down his emotions, and then he discovered that he can put himself in this biofeedback or neuro feedback loop, where every time he writes on an emotion, it's an even better emotion than last time, and he's sort of like gaining momentum. It's like almost like riding a bike, but getting faster and faster and better and better. And by the end of this day, he's just like, I am feeling so great, and it's like making yourself feel good on purpose, not letting the TV dictate how you feel on a day-to-day basis, not allowing the outside input, but actually creating your own momentum. Yay, Mike.
And
I think.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to say, I think that you do have to be honest with where you're at, because I think it's important to to be able to evaluate what is actually really going on. And so when I am feeling good, I definitely want to be able to recognize that. But when I'm feeling bad, I do recognize that too. And I think that's I think those are both really helpful, because when something is going wrong, you do need to be able to identify that, because it's probably even more important to be able to do that. But go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, and like I said, like you need to be able to identify that. So I'm gonna cut my own piece of bread from what you said there, because it's like all of you saw in in the face reading class, one of the challenges, or one of the how would I say, areas of potential growth that I have is working on my on expressing my emotions. And so if you feel good, why not show that you feel good as well? Like who told you that that it's not appropriate to laugh out loud, or like all those social restrictions, or the political correctness, or who, like, oftentimes I tell my students, like, here in Jamaica there was never a problem, but here in Germany people are not accustomed to speak out loud or to sing. In capoeira we sing songs. So if I ask him to sing songs and to hit the drum or so, then it's like, at most they're whispering. So that's an opportunity also to free yourself, free your voice. Who told you can't sing? Who told you have to speak Portuguese perfectly in order to sing one or two words which you can learn just like that? So it's those are very interesting situations where you can challenge people, not necessarily only in a physical way, but where you can challenge them to kind of jump over their shadow and free themselves from all different kind of angles. And I remember that I had a very interesting lesson many years ago about and it was the other way around. Like I had to learn it felt like I had to learn that in that moment of my life, how to put myself down, how to get really, really depressed, and how to put myself like way down in order to achieve a goal that I had at the time, which was to dodge the then by that time still obligatory military service here. So I had to convince a bunch of institutions, and actually first psychologists and then psychiatrists. First the regular ones, and then after the ones in the army hospital, that it would not have been a good idea to draft me, basically. And that was quite a piece of work. And it was like the base lesson, the basic lesson in it was that it's actually pretty easy, although I was doing all right. But if you know how to do it, it's actually terrifying, like how easy it is with just like with a little bit of practice. Within a few minutes, like I was able to put myself in a state where like I was close to tears, where like started to shiver, where I was completely freaked out and afraid, and felt like almost suicidal and depressive. And so then I thought, like, well, that's actually really interesting. But if I can do it that way, if I can put myself down, then is there potential also to do it the other way around? Even like after I step out of the doctor with all the prescriptions for antidepressants, and so it's like then I had to get myself out of that.
Of course you were depressed. They were trying to draft you.
I was gonna say, all you had to do is imagine what the possible future was.
Yeah,
I'd be crying too, man.
Pretty awesome, Dennis.
You said something that reminded me of an aspect of trauma about like toning down your feelings, and how like certain children like were not just used to laughing or expressing themselves. That's a really common thing in children with PTSD, because any like reaction can provoke any sort of abuse, and you don't really know when it's gonna be there. And also when the abuse happens, your body, if everyone knows like the two, fight or flight, and there's also freeze, or what I like to call posturing. And it's when your brain knows that you cannot escape, you have to deal with this, and it numbs you. It literally your body will produce up to 8 milligrams, I believe, of endogenous morphine. And a lot of people get so used to that feeling that like me, for example, I had a problem with I could only feel extremely powerful emotions, and every other time people would ask me, how you doing, how you feel, and I'm like, I'm fine, but my face will look like resting bitch face all the time, like just straight, like. And even my husband would make comments. He would be like, you look like you're not here. And he would get really upset with me. And I was like, I didn't realize that's what my face looked like. And I read about this and I was like, oh yeah, all the facial muscles relax because your body is like, you can't deal with this, so we're going to drug you until you're out of it. Well, you do that for so long, you end up not realizing that you're not feeling. You're just numb a good chunk of the time and don't even know that that's what you're feeling, because the only time you feel extreme emotion, it's so emotional that it's overpowering and it triggers other events. So you're either in a state of numbness or being triggered for like 90% of your day. It can be really disorienting.
Boy, that's a very good recollection. I mean, I think that's certainly something that I think a lot of people are potentially, floating on the edge of in a lot of different ways, being that we have, we're isolating ourselves through the way that we, do our work, where we're, almost always by ourselves in front of a computer screen. Um, we can fall victim to that kind of thing. I think certainly a lot of people are, in that kind of in that area. So
And also, if I'm just going to interject really quickly, if anybody is having these kind of experiences or dealing with trauma whatsoever, last week we shared a bunch of different personality tests, and one of them was the ACE study, which is very, very effective at pinpointing the trauma, and sometimes just the understanding of it can give you some strength to deal with it in a more effective manner. And the tests were amazing. So listen to the shows last week, and then the descriptions will give you the links.
What came to my mind a while ago was that, not only to look at what you described, some on an individual perspective, but also like on like seeing it from the perspective of looking at our society at large, or at humanity at large, like. And I think that's why what you were hinting at, Michael, as well, that we as a society, or we as people, like if I look left and right, like when I walk outside, then sometimes even the majority of people seem to be in a state similar to what you just described, Willow. And then I think, well, is that by design? Is there somebody benefiting from that? When you talk about the situation of abuse, you have the flight or fight, or then you have the freeze reaction, even like in a situation of self-defense, that like some people get stuck in that situation. Then if the abuser finds out or has ways of putting people into that situation, then it certainly puts him into an even more powerful position, so to say. And if on a level of society, the majority of people are kind of numbed by TV, by junk food, and by all the other influences that we're exposed to nowadays, then it certainly seems that there are certain entities that actually benefit from that, and then which makes it even more important, I believe, for us to bring awareness in our day-by-day lives, and I guess being aware of our values and setting and consciously setting our goals is one way out of the numbness, so to say. And what also came to my mind is a spontaneous behavior. That is something also that wants to be harnessed, because to be able to spontaneously react to a stimuli and not to be inhibited by feeling that, I have to control myself in order not to trigger anybody, in order not to be politically incorrect or whatever, that takes away freedom, because spontaneity means that you're free to express yourself, free to be who you are right now, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. You should be able to express yourself freely. But who is doing that today? Even, and the sad thing is that's observing children. That's actually a natural state that we're in. Like as children, you can see it in some of them still, but also it's sad how to observe that the institutions children have to be put, or are being put nowadays, also kind of inhibit that free and spontaneous behavior in them,
and the creative expression.
Yeah. That's it's actually carried over into my jiu-jitsu practice. Like just today, I had a class and rolled with a much bigger guy than me. I think he was like 6'4" to my like 5'2", and I punched him in the face with my foot on accident. It was totally an accident, but like I could tell that my face was instant terror, and like my whole body just went like this, and I was just like, I'm so sorry, and I had to like get back in the groove of going at him aggressively because that's what I was training to do. And I was like, I really need to like focus on like letting myself be and react as I would. And we're in a jiu-jitsu class. Someone's probably going to get punched in the face. You don't have to apologize every time. But yeah, just that inhibition in the class has really helped me develop a sense of self, to be honest.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to add to what Dennis is saying is that one doesn't necessarily have to be an abuser in order to react to evoke the freeze reaction. I've had clients where that reaction was triggered by somebody asking them what they want for breakfast, or oh, you're gonna wear that jacket. You know what I mean? Like very innocent questions, right? And then suddenly it's like a thing because that triggers them from something from the past.
Many a fights
Right.
when my marriage have been over that.
All right. Well, I'm sad to say we're running out of time, but I really appreciate the conversation we had today. Let's talk a little bit about next week's plan of action. We've definitely got Monday. We're going to be doing a return to the journaling thing, so we'll have a journaling update at the end of Monday's show. But we're going to continue on the values, and we're going to be talking about time study. Tim, is that correct?
Yeah, so we're going to be doing a pie chart time study, and we'll have that out on the website, and we can distribute it's easy to find and pretty easy to do as well. And it's understanding how you spend your time, documenting that, and then kind of aligning it with your values, and then understanding if there are places where you're misaligned, and deciding consciously how you want to spend your time in the future. So it's a nice exercise.
And when should we start monitoring our time in order to be prepared for this? Is it like tomorrow?
It's not like an ongoing thing. It's just kind of a reflection. So you can do it at any time before our next session. We can talk about it.
Anytime before Monday. So that's tomorrow or Saturday or Sunday.
Yes.
So
But it only
audience
takes
members,
like 20 minutes. It's like a 20-minute exercise.
But isn't it like aren't you supposed to monitor your time from the moment you wake up to?
You can do it that way, or you can just do, because I don't spend every day in the same fashion, so I devote different times to different things and every day, and I have
generally
a routine, but other things come up. So
when I think
it's a bit of an estimate.
When I think about the exercise,
it doesn't have to be like recorded.
Oh no, hang on. Because when I think about that exercise, I go, well, if I were to just guesstimate and write down my time, I'd probably be whitewashing it and writing down more work time and less inert time, whatever, than I have. But in reality, maybe I do silly things that are not adding to my future more often. But then I rethought that thought and I was like, well, do I really? Because even if I'm listening to something or watching something, I'm still responding to emails and stuff. So is it really downtime? Or, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Chaos.
So under commitment in my values exercise, I have reliability, trustworthiness, consistency, and then under autonomy, I have ethics. So I have to perform those things with myself. When I'm doing my studies, I have to be honest as much as I can. And maybe, we don't want to admit some things, or maybe it's hard to be honest with ourselves, or we don't know scientifically how we spend every minute of our day. We have to make some estimates.
All right.
Yeah, well, this is a starting point, right? This
Yeah.
is a starting point. It doesn't mean it's the ending point. It's just
That's
a
right.
starting point.
It's not that I'm not convinced, is that, calculating and keeping track of things is not my
We'll just wing it.
swimming pool.
Wing it.
You and I are in the same boat.
Do it live.
The two Sagittariuses are like, don't put me in a cage.
Deirdre actually tried to get me to do this exercise, so like a pie chart, and I can tell you exactly what I wrote. It was like, I spent, this amount of time on this. I started doing this. Kurt came home, started talking to Kurt. No more.
How much
So
time do you spend on your values?
That's a good
No.
question.
Well, no,
Living
but
your values.
All
So
these
first
things,
of all-
these things.
hang on. First
Right.
of all, we got to do a snapshot of what's happening right now. So for Monday, why don't we just each think about what's happening, how you're spending your time right now? And then second of all, once you have the definition of how you're spending your time, then we can look at, is the current time spent aligned with what your values were?
Yes. Very good.
Alrighty, so that wraps up another show, and thank you all for taking the time and giving us your attention. We hope it was very effective, and we will see you next time.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.